Good evening, everyone. At 7 p.m. Welcome to the Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for October 12th, 2021 via Zoom. My name is Mark Moore, Vice Chair, calling the meeting to order as our Chair, Rob Champetti, can't be here tonight. As always, we have with us our City Planning Director, Andy Port, managing participation of attendees with City Planner Caitlin Sullivan driving the visuals for the applicants, which won't entail much this evening. And of course, before we start, we'd like to recognize our note taker, Gretchen Joy, for her dedicated efforts. I'll start with the roll call introduction to ensure that we have proper quorum. As I mentioned earlier, I am Mark Moore, Vice Chair, obviously in attendance. Rob Champetti is absent. I'll now introduce each member and ask that they respond with here. I don't believe our Secretary, Stephen Delisle, is called in yet. Caitlin, is that true?
He has, and I just unmuted him. Stephen, can you hear us and say you're here?
Say and hear.
I am here.
Excellent. That's great. Member Ken Swanton.
I am here too.
Member Walter Budchagnon.
Here.
And Associate Member Greg Bennett.
Here.
All right, finding 5 members present, we have a quorum and can proceed. The agenda for tonight is very brief, consisting of only a request for a continuance before we move on to the board's business meeting. As such, I'll spare any members of the public who may have logged on, and I probably still think that's 0. From the major preamble that I usually do, but simply to say that normally public hearings are begun after the roll. Applicants present the details of the application and relief sought. Public comments are then solicited through Zoom using the raised hand function, and comments are made in support or opposition. Once those comments are exhausted, that portion is closed. The board then asks questions of the applicant. That portion is closed when all questions have been answered. The board then publicly deliberates, discussing the merits of the application, and then a vote is taken. 4 votes in the affirmative at minimum, and the application passes, and we move on to the next. So with that explanation done, I will just going to move on to the public hearing portion tonight, which consists only of a request for a continuance from the Caswell Restaurant Group, care of Lisa Mead. I believe this request is by writing, Caitlin, is that correct? So we won't,
That's right.
The applicant will not be in attendance. So it's request to appeal application 2021-18, and they are looking to continue this to the December 14th meeting of this year. Do we have any discussion? And if not, do we have a motion? Hearing no discussion, I will.
Wait a sec.
Yeah.
This is Ken Swanton. I'd like to have a brief discussion if you don't mind.
Sure.
I mean, December 14th seems like a very long way away. This came up way long ago, back in the springtime, you know, from the Brine restaurant there, because they wanted to overturn the downtown zoning, and they appealed it. And our city solicitor said it was kind of baseless, and then they went on and changed their tact and had us approve a variance, which we did, so they could go ahead and they could then proceed with the planning board. But they've never proceeded with the planning board. To my knowledge, they've never even approached the planning board, and this is a long time ago now. So to have this thing just hanging over the city's head when the city solicitor has already said that it's baseless is really concerning to me. If they were asking for a delay for a month or something, but to go all the way to December, it just seems, you know, I wouldn't have thought of it, because normally we always say when somebody wants to continue something to go ahead. But I think at our last meeting, one of our members voted against a continuance. And I'm just uncomfortable and definitely continuing this thing when we've already granted the variance that they wanted. And I'm just very uncomfortable. If it was like for a month, I would feel differently. But all the way to December, I just discovered that was not part of what was sent to us ahead of time. No, I'm sorry, it was 9 hours ago. Caitlin put out a note saying December. So anyway, it's a long way from now, and I'm just uncomfortable going that far. So I appreciate having a little discussion here.
Okay.
And that's just how I feel.
Anyone else have a thought on this?
Well,
Yay or nay?
This is Stephen Delisle. I would tend to concur. I mean, I don't know what the appropriate time frame would be, but maybe December is a bit long for this, especially if there's been no movement with the planning board. I was not aware of that. I did wonder about what the status of the matter before the planning board was, and I guess there isn't one. So I would concur in some respects with Mr. Swanton.
Yeah, just to add something here, I don't mind continuing it. I just don't like continuing it so indefinitely for so long when there's no movement with the planning board. So I'm really objecting to the date we're continuing this to, because I've never voted against a continuance. I just don't like doing it for such a long period of time.
Yeah, I share these concerns, particularly in view of the fact that, as we now come to understand, there's been no effort to move the process along before the planning board. I tend to agree. I mean, I don't think we should hold this indefinitely, particularly if we're not going to move forward in the planning board. So I share all of these concerns. Perhaps we consider this being their final request for grant that we would grant, or shorten the time frame. I would be open to either of those approaches, or whatever else somebody with a keener thought about it might suggest.
Buddy, have any thoughts?
I know the reason they've kept this open is if, I believe it was if their efforts with the planning board were to fail, this path would still be open to them. So I assume that's why this is being asked to be continued. They still want that legal path available. And I guess I don't have a problem with the extension, and I don't know what the right answer is. They're asking for an extension to a specific date. We have to either approve or deny that. I don't think we can say no, or October 26th. So I think we might be in a rat hole by saying yes with a date, or no altogether.
I hear
Well, I
you.
think
Go ahead.
this is Stephen Delisle.
Yep.
Mr. Chagnon, I think the board is free to make its own motion. So we can move to continue it to a meeting in October or a meeting in November, or otherwise. I think that was the request from the applicant. I don't think that we are deemed to vote yes or no on that request. I think we craft our own motions.
So you're saying that the applicant did not ask for a specific date?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the board is free to craft its own motions.
Yeah, there's the request that was specifically made, and as Mr. Chagnon said, I know, and I think we all aware of what they're doing. They're trying to keep this placeholder in case they can't come to an agreement. But I do share concerns of the board where that some of you have made, that this is without any effort to actually approach the plan department with concrete plans after being granted a variance. It's a little troublesome just to keep pushing this out into the future. So I would tend to agree that we don't have to grant the continuance to the date requested. I think it's easier to grant a continuance to a date of our choosing, to allow time to get more legal opinion on the matter, and also request that next time this continuance is asked for, we get more detail from the applicant themselves. Does that make sense to everyone? Or is that not?
I think that sounds like, Mr. Moore, this is Mr. Delisle. I think that sounds like a measured approach.
Right. I would agree. I mean, I'm keen to hear from the applicant at this point. I'm somewhat distressed by this strategy.
Right.
And it's the zoning board should not be kind of played as a pawn in their strategy here. It's somewhat distressing to me.
All right. So
Yeah, if I could just also chime
sure.
in.
Yep, go right
I
ahead.
think, October is a little soon here, but I think I would suggest like the second meeting in November, but I also like what Mr. Bennett said, which is to say that we don't really plan on continuing this again. Now, maybe we could say unless you have some compelling reasons you want to continue it again, but just to rubber stamp an indefinite continuation of something our city solicitor already said is baseless, to me is very troubling. So I guess I would suggest to like maybe the second meeting in November as a date, with also the understanding that don't assume we're just going to continue this indefinitely.
Yeah, with some communication that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, give us a good reason to continue it,
Right.
because you haven't approached the planning board, so why are we just continuing this?
Right.
You know, it's hard because the city is undergoing challenges to the same bylaw, and to have that happening while this is being continued is just, to me, troubling. I think we're asked to basically support this appeal to the city's bylaw that our solicitors already recommended we just vote down. So, and you know, I would feel differently if we worked hard and we gave them a variance for the key thing they needed, the opening windows.
Right.
I think we did our part here anyway. So I don't know, as a suggestion, maybe listening to what each of you has said, suggesting we go, just continue it, not to December 14th, but to our second meeting in November. And with the understanding that we're not going to continue it further unless some compelling reason from them is presented.
And then a board can ask, and that gives us time to ask for additional opinion from our council to see, you know, what recourse we have to just end the continuances without
Yeah.
entering into further aggravation legally. So,
yeah.
All right. So, Caitlin, I don't have the calendar in front of me.
Looks like the second meeting in November is, let's see, November 23rd.
Is everyone comfortable with that?
Yes, I would agree. I just ask one question, perhaps.
Sure. Mhm.
Mr. Delisle may be helpful here. To turn square corners on this, should we deny this request for December and enter our order on the November date? Procedurally, what would be the most appropriate, the proper approach?
Yeah.
Mr. Bennett, this is Mr. Delisle. I think that what my point was is the applicant has made a request. The board, I believe we've always treated this. I believe that Mr. Ciampetti has said this on a number of occasions, that the board has the latitude to craft its own motion. So I don't think that we have to, and if I may be wrong, maybe Andy can speak to this better, but I think that the board is the authority here, and the board can make the motion.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just wanted to raise the point, but I feel comfortable with how you've explained it. So I'm comfortable with that. I think that the board has that authority.
That's a good point by both of you. I think we've been through this where someone's requested a date and it's been, hey, we just can't do that date. The calendar's too full. We move it on to a different one. So I think we'll move on with that.
Yeah.
All right. So second meeting is the 23rd of November. And do we have a motion?
This is Mr. Delisle. I'll make the motion to continue the application to the meeting of the evening of November 23rd, 2021.
I'll second it, Ken Swanton.
Okay, we have a motion to continue application 2021-18 to November 23rd of this year, made by Mr. Delisle, seconded by Mr. Swanton. We go to a vote. Mr. Delisle?
Yes.
Mr. Swanton?
Yep.
Mr. Chagnon?
Yes.
Mr. Bennett?
Yes.
Myself as a yes. So all in the affirmative, we will continue this to the 23rd, and we will make sure to reach out to the applicant explaining what we need before this next meeting comes up. We'll also seek some advice from our own city councilor. With that, that ends the public hearings for this evening. So we move on to business meeting, which is the approval of minutes from the 9/28 meeting. Anyone have any comments, corrections, deletions, additions? If not, a motion.
I had one correction, Chair. It's on page 5, second paragraph, second sentence. I believe it's missing some words. At least my copy says, Mr. Champetti, how a large vehicle be alerted to the height of the canopy. I think it wants to say, Mr. Champetti asked how a large vehicle would be alerted. That's all.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
I move we approve the minutes with that change.
Excellent. I'm sorry, who seconded it?
Greg Bennick.
Mr. Bennick, I'm sorry. Okay, made Mr. Swanton, seconded by Mr. Bennick, and I will do the vote now on the minutes with the change that was mentioned. Mr. Delisle,
Yes.
Mr. Swanton,
Yes.
Mr. Chagnon,
Yes.
Mr. Bennick.
Yes.
I am also a yes. So as amended, the minutes are approved, and that ends the business. I believe that ends the business meeting because there's no one, unless Caitlin, you have an update for us.
I don't, Chair. Thank you.
All right. So that concludes the business meeting portion of tonight's agenda. So with that, we're done, almost.
It's a record.
Yes, that would be a record for me, for sure. Probably for all of us. So anyone has a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Excellent. I don't hear a second. How can I not hear a second? There we go. Made and seconded, motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? You guys have it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good
all.
night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Bye.